Good morning.
Good morning. So today is September 15th, 2024, and our topic today is healing ourselves, healing others.
Come over here.
Oh,
We're
I'm
losing you on the
getting out
screen.
of the screen.
Yeah.
And it's a great topic today because that I've been thinking about healing all week, and even today I'm thinking about healing myself of a cold, which which always seems to be the most difficult thing to heal. I don't know why,
Right.
but that is our topic today, and of course it's a very interesting subject for us because it's the essence and basis of our teaching. This teaching called Science of Mind, the origins of it was in healing other people through our prayer practitioners and ministers who are prayer practitioners. And this began in the early 1900s for our teaching, but it goes back into the 1800s, really. And it was at a time when our medical health was not very good,
Yeah.
to say the
Dentists were
least.
the closest thing we had to
It was
doctors.
not very
Right.
good. And people did not trust the traveling doctors that we had
And they still don't.
because they did some pretty,
Right.
unremarkable things,
Right.
but things that could actually be harmful. And so people didn't trust them. And so healing was really important, both for oneself and to help others that you love. And so that's really what unity churches were founded on. Their founders both healed themselves of unhealable diseases. And
Mary
so did
Baker Eddy.
Mary Baker Eddy, who founded Christian Science. Also did. She had help. She learned from a healer, but then she began teaching it and interpreting the Bible and her way. She really believed Christian Science, that there was a science to this healing thing, and that Jesus had used it. And so that's really the basis. A lot of our teaching for how to heal oneself and others is based on Jesus' teaching and the things he's purported to have said about it and how he said it. Most specifically, we in the New Testament we don't ever hear of Jesus beseeching and asking God to help it and heal a person. He just said things like, "Pick up your cot and walk," or "A blind man now you can see." He just made a command and said, "And it's done. Do it.
Yeah, hospitals have the same thing. If you don't have insurance, pick up your
Pick up your bed and leave."
leave. That's right. Yeah. Sorry. I'm going to start us off with a little different. What I've noticed or what I've learned about the sickness is that very often people take a position that they're guilty of something wrong that they've done, that they feel often responsible for their illness. They feel bad and angry about their illness. And none of those things really contribute to our well-being or to the healing process. So I have a statement I want to share. Everything is exactly the way it needs to be for me to learn what I'm here to learn. Everything is exactly the way it needs to be. Now, that doesn't mean it needs to stay that way. But if we
Or that you have to like it.
Right, but if we view a condition, if we view illness as condition, all conditions can change. If we have a condition, whatever that condition is, there were things that brought that into fruition. So every condition has had to have a recipe that was followed in order for it to exist. The recipe may have been unresolved frustration or anger or hurt. It may have been a bad diet. It may have been doing things that are not helpful for you, that you knew weren't helpful, but you thought they wouldn't catch up with you. But everything is exactly the way it needs to be, given the conditions that you have lived in. And why that's important is it immediately addresses the issue of judgment and guilt, which is really something that interferes with being able to heal from any experience or from any situation. So if everything is exactly the way it needs to be right now, then what is it that I want to do to have what is right now something I can learn from? How can I grow from this experience? And if you think about a lot of the traumas in your own life, uh, at least in my experience, the traumas once having been given some time and distance, have often become tools that have taught me things that I need to know. And so in many cases, an illness or a condition that we need to be healed from, we need to look into, understand that it has value, and that from that we can learn. I've often, because I've worked with a lot of addiction, folks that are struggling with addiction, heard a lot of people say, I'm a gratefully recovering alcoholic. And they're not lamenting their use of alcohol. They are aware of the learning that they needed to do in order to be able to be who they are now that they're no longer using alcohol. But I've also heard that with people who've had cancer. They've said cancer was the biggest teacher I've ever had. And so the first thing I'd like to suggest is that whatever you're struggling with, whatever you're feeling that is difficult that you need to heal from, accept that it's a condition and that it's a condition that you can learn from. Then the second thing that I want to share is I'm not afraid of any condition. I bring love to every condition, and my love is the light that is required for change. And I want us to think about that. I am not afraid of any condition. You see, when a condition occurs and fear is our first response, that fear actually interferes with our immune system. It actually gets in the way of the immune system functioning the way it needs to. And if you think about it, very often you've had something awful happen to you and or you've been through a really difficult time, and following that you get a cold or you get sick, and you could say that the trauma of the experience affected the immune system, because when you're afraid you don't need an immune system, you need to be able to run. And so what happens is the body is preparing itself for an attack, and it puts the immune system on hold, and when that happens you're much more vulnerable to getting sick. So it's not uncommon for us to get sick in response to fear. And so if I could say to myself, I'm not afraid of the condition, I bring love to every condition. And think about that. If you've ever had a pet that you've loved, when they're hurt, you don't approach the hurt, you approach them with love. And when you approach them with love, they will often allow you to do things that they wouldn't normally allow because they're in pain. But it's the love that is the bridge that allows you to intervene or to be effective in your connection. I worked in the emergency room for 5 years. And I know that whenever I approached a patient who was in trouble with recognition of their wholeness of their being, when I was able to say, wow, what a remarkable person you are that you were able to get to this place, they would then smile and say, oh my God, I hadn't thought I was remarkable. I just thought I was broken. And in that move away from the brokenness into the appreciation, the love, the kindness, the generosity of kindness that we offer is in and of itself a healing. And many people are actually not sick from a condition that is physical. They're sick from the condition of feeling not valuable or not loved or not cared about. And so when we bring love to every condition, we actually then create the light that is needed for us to be able to see through the condition and into the possibility of healing. And the last thing I wanted to share is, no, actually, there's a couple more things. I look at life with the eyes of a healer. Think about that, looking at all of life with the eyes of a healer, not the eyes of a victim, not the eyes of a person who's trying to avoid a bad condition and so feels so lucky that they didn't get caught, but rather that you walk into every situation and you position yourself as I'm a healer. I bring healing to every condition. I bring healing to life. And when you think of yourself as a healer, no matter what your condition is, then you have a different experience. I was struck some time ago when I talked to a man who did a lot of healing work, and he was sharing with me all the things that he'd done on absentee healing, where he would actually hold the person in heart and mind and see that person getting better. And that person then would call back and write him a letter and say, I'm better now. I've healed from this condition. How can you possibly do that? You must be an amazingly strong and powerful person. I got to meet him. He's in a wheelchair. And so he'd had a stroke. Several things had gone wrong. He was diabetic. He had lots of conditions that you would have thought would have preoccupied him with what was wrong with him rather than what was possible. So, can you be a healer and have parts of you that don't work very well? Absolutely, because the whole of you is more than any of the parts. And so, it's really, really important for ourselves to see ourselves as healers, that we bring the healing energy, we bring the healing love to every condition. And then lastly, I want to suggest that healing has side effects. And sometimes, actually, what happens is that we are not happy with the side effects of healing, so we get sick again. One of the side effects of healing is that you may not get all the attention you were getting when you were sick. And we actually know that people sometimes get sick because they don't feel the love that they need to feel. And when they go to the hospital or they go to the doctor or they see somebody, that person cares for them. And that caring is actually often the unspoken illness that needs to be healed. And so we really want to pay attention to when I ask for healing, when I say yes to healing, what am I willing to give up that I'm holding on to, or the condition that I've been in that maybe has something to do with my having gotten sick in the first place. And so the positive side effects of healing are that you no longer have the burden that you once had. The negative side effects is you don't have an excuse for carrying around, I can't, I can't, I can't. And so sometimes people get sick because they want to have a way to say I can't that people won't argue with rather than I can. And so it's really, really important for us to learn how to say yes to healing, yes to the adventure, and yes, everything is exactly the way it needs to be. Now, what does I need to do in order for that, the way that is, to change and for me to learn from this life experience?
Well, I know, Bob, that you've done a lot of healing work in our time together. See, we're approaching 37 years, I think
My
now.
God, that's incredible.
And but one of the things that I want to say about that type of work, that type of healing, is that we're all creators. We're all creating all the time. We
Yes,
create through our thoughts, our beliefs, and the use of our minds. And so it's often easier for someone else to use our mind to see that person and know that person as totally well, and that creates that for that person. We're all connected. We're all connected with this energetic force, so I can't think something about you and for you that doesn't affect you as well.
mm,
And so that's how we heal others. Uh, we don't heal them with sympathy and feeling sorry for them. That might be sympathetic and kind in some way, but it does not help heal them. Healing them, and this is very difficult when you're dealing with a loved one, because you don't want them to be sick, you don't want them to be ill, and it hurts you to see them that way. And yet what you need to do is see them as well in your mind's eye. You need to visualize them well, know that's the truth for them, release that idea, and do that over and over and over again. And that's also what you need to do for yourself, because you're creating. So if you, with your mind, are worried about yourself being sick or getting older or not healing or whatever, you're creating that. We have to take responsibility for what we're creating. We get sloppy and lazy with the use of our mind. And it's very human, and it's very natural, and it's what everybody else will even encourage you to do. But it takes discipline to do what Jesus did, which is say, pick up your bed and walk. you, you know, you can now see, it says your faith has made you whole. For you, what is faith? Your belief. In other words, he said to the one, your belief that I can heal you has made you whole.
mhm.
So that we have such power with our thinking.
And we don't realize how often our thoughts mingle. A while back, we were sitting at each of us watching television, and it was not a commercial program. So there was a movie with no commercials, and there was no event that matched what I was thinking, which is, God, I would love some ice cream. And then Judith turned to me and
You
looked,
too.
and Judith turned to me and said, "You too." I said, wow. I mean, if we can share in mind the desire for ice
For
cream,
ice
right?
cream.
Could we share the desire for something else? And we've often looked at each other and said,
We
yes.
don't have any ice cream in
Right,
Hyannis
right.
because
And that's when we need somebody to bring us ice cream, but the other people didn't get that at the supermarket to bring.
uh,
I don't know why we're here with your ice cream. You were thinking that, yeah. We share thoughts. We mingle, our thoughts mingle. Well, why not mingle the possibility of a healing rather than what if you're hurt and I envision the hurt could get worse? and that the hurt is going to be fatal. And what if I hold on to the idea of the possibility of the hurt that you have is fatal? And if our thoughts mingle, it won't take long before you're starting to think fatally as well. And so what we can do in thought alone is to hold the highest watch for the highest best outcome. And in having done that, knowing that thoughts mingle, we have now entered into the thinking of the person who's sick with the possibility of, as I said earlier, bringing light to the condition and bringing light into that person's life. We can do that anywhere. I've sat at an airport next to somebody or across from somebody who every time they moved, you saw them, they were feeling pain, and I knew that they were hurting. So I did treatment. And what I
What is
imagined,
treatment?
well, what I did was I imagined that this person wasn't hurting anymore, that this person had now experienced the healing. They didn't ask me to do it, and I didn't get permission. I just simply said, the condition that you're feeling right now is just a condition, and you're healed from it, and it's amazing. And what I watched is not much happened. Not much happened, but why wouldn't I do that if I could? And one of the things that I learned working in the emergency room, which was really interesting, I watched a woman come in who was probably 300 pounds heavier than she needed to be. And why I say that is because she was having a heart attack. And if you've seen somebody who weighs close to 500 pounds who's having a heart attack, there's not going to be a lot of hope that they're going to get better. And so she didn't get better. And they did everything that they could possibly do long after it was very clear that it wasn't going to work. And it seemed to me to be somehow really awful that they would continue doing what they did. And so I went to the doctor at the end of it. And I said, "Why did you do that? You knew you lost her." And he said, "We need to practice. And if it had worked, you wouldn't be asking that question."
Uh,
And I thought, wow, we need to practice. We can practice anywhere and everywhere. Why do we practice only when there's a fire to put out fires? If you're a fire person, man or woman, and you work for the department, they send you out on training missions. They train you and you get a certificate saying that you have fought a fire in the past and that you know how to do that. Why don't we recognize that healing is something that, of course, we in our teaching give certificates for having learned how to do that. But you don't have to get a certificate to be healed. You simply have to be willing to imagine in your mind that that person is no longer suffering with the condition that they're suffering with, and that they've learned what they need to learn. And if nothing else happens, then that you're practicing for the time where you comfortably and easily can do it well.
exactly. And when I first learned this, I just it was like a miracle
Like
in
magic.
my life and in my family. Uh, because all I had been doing prior was worrying, about a loved one was experiencing a lot of poor health. And you think you're doing what the natural thing to worry about them. But worrying is what? You're just massaging and mentally worst case scenarios, and ain't it awful and how
Yeah.
terrible this is. So you're creating more of what you don't want. So it takes mental discipline to do this, to immediately go to affirming and knowing the truth and health and wholeness. Now, I would like to mention something because we're approaching significant birthdays here, the end of this year, or for you next month. And our lives are self-limiting. They are designed to be that way. So even using these wonderful tools, I don't know of any terrific uh, teachers and practitioners and ministers who haven't made their transition to the other side. That's preordained. Nobody lives forever. And so there's no failure in a process of death, whether that process is with dis-ease or with, you know, just a sudden thing like a heart attack or a stroke. Those are not, they're not disasters, and they're not terrible. They are a built-in thing of a limited life, so that we don't have to spend eternity in this
Really.
one aging body or a lifetime. We get to go on and have unlimited
I
possibilities.
don't want to live in this condo for 200 years. But if you think about it, life is a condition and death is a condition. And it's a condition that we pass through. It's not an ending, it's a condition. And when we get to the other side, that's a condition that we live in. And then if we come back and we do this again, I happen to believe that many times we do, then we are born into another condition or set of conditions that we have actually arranged for the learning that we need to do. And I've come to believe I used to do a lot of hypnosis, and after you've done 50 or 60 past life regressions, taking people back to other lives, and they've spoken languages that are not, they're not their language, that it takes a university a month to trace because it's an ancient language. You have to start believing that this thing called life that we know now is a condition that we will also pass through. And like every condition that we like, we don't want it to end. When I watch a really, really good movie, I'm both delighted to get to the ending to see how it worked out and sad that it ended because I want it to continue. So this motion picture that you're directing and producing and acting in is a major one, but it's not the only one. Not your last one.
No, not your last movie. And so
When you get to the other side, you will get an Oscar.
I had wanted to share some experiences of some wonderful healers, and we're about out of time. But I do want to remind you, if you don't know about the story of Joe Dispenza. Joe Dispenza started his career as a chiropractor, and he was running a triathlete event, where you run and swim and bike. And he was a relatively new chiropractor in Southern California. And in one of these events where he was on the bicycle, he was hit by a car and dragged. And his back was totally broken to the point that all the doctors said he had to have a bar put in his back and he would never walk again. Well, that didn't seem like a good idea to him. I don't know what he knew about this form of healing, if anything, but he decided that that was not an option for him. And he lay on like a or a massage, I'll say like a massage bed where his face had an opening because his back had to be totally straight. And knowing very well what a backbone looks like, a healthy backbone, he spent his time visualizing his backbone being in perfect shape, every vertebrae being perfect and whole and aligned. And I don't know how many months it took him, but it was a matter of months that he totally healed his back.
But
With no operation.
think about that. How many times have you had a condition that you gave months of attention to? Did you give a day or two of attention, waited to see if there was going to be a change and gave up on it?
A few seconds here
Yeah,
and
did you
there.
vacillate back and forth with, I feel powerful, I feel like I've done a healing, and then the next day, that doesn't seem like it's working, and maybe it doesn't work, I'll try again. So this consistency, this mastery of mind contributed significantly to the healing to the point now where he's walking well and is an athlete again and
And
several
teaching
books
others
and
how to
and
heal
teaching again.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's one of many examples of people who've learned from, who have used this practice of mind over matter, mind in relationship to matter,
Right.
mind changing matter.
Right. And it's a very powerful tool that you have. Our society knows it. Our society knows it, but they do not teach it and stress it. We are more likely go into, oh, you poor victim. Let's see
Mhm.
what I can do to help you. So we're just reminding you, we know that many of our listeners already know this, but it's such an important, life-changing tool to use, to use our creative mind in ways that make our lives more joyous, more whole, more complete, and to help others do that also. Because sometimes we can know their wholeness when they can't.
So I'd like to end with a treatment if we can,
Let's do.
for prayer. So what I know right here and right now is that there is a light in the very core of my being. That light is the light of God. That light is the light of healing. That light is the light that is everywhere present in all of life. I am connected to, and it is in and through and works through me all of the time. So I reach down deep into the very soul, into the very heart, to the very core of my being, and I say yes to that light, illuminating all that needs to be illumined, all that needs to be healed, all that I desire and require to have unfold in my life. I say yes to, and it does exactly as it should, because I am exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what I need to be doing. And for this, I say thank you, and together we say, and so
So
it
it
is.
is.
I think we go here to the part where we,
Yes, we do. We're sharing a screen now where we will now give people an opportunity to support this ministry.
this is a very important piece for us because this ministry is not a big ministry and it makes no difference how large it is. It requires time and effort and energy, and we do treatment work for all of you. I do treatment work for all of the clients that I work with in the mental health system that I work in. We do a great deal of work to bring healing to the planet, and you and your contribution to this ministry make that possible and help us stay focused on what it is we're here to do. And for that, we're hugely grateful. So for those of you that haven't learned how or don't know exactly how this works, would you tell us?
Yes, this is up the page of our website, which is cslpalmbeaches.org. And when you go there, this button is ways to donate. When you click on that, we'll give you ways that you can send financial support to our organization. And we like to always use this affirmation because we know that giving is receiving. It is the law of circulation. You have to give you have to give more to receive more. So, and you should be giving to sources of your inspiration, because that's what this is about. And to become more inspired, you need to support the sources that inspire you. So let's say together this affirmation. My
My
investment today is made with a full realization that God is the source of my supply and returns it to me enriched and multiplied. And so it is.
Okay,
Okay, so
and share, stop share.
there we go. Thank you.
And then let's stop the recording.